Welcome, everybody, to Two Brothers Politics. I am John, and tonight we are going to be talking about the Wagner Mercenary Group. There was another attack on an apartment in Ukraine. Last we counted was 24 dead, and I believe that number was still rising. Looks like we've got strokes that have been associated to the COVID jabs. I believe that was specifically Pfizer. And lastly, we have the World Economic Forum has officially kicked off their annual meeting in Davos, Switzerland.
We're also going to be starting off with Matt Gaetz being on CNN. He is talking about possibly putting cameras in Congress 24/7. And he is also talking about releasing or trying to get released footage from January 6th. All of that right after this. All right, so we're going to be diving right into Matt Gaetz being on CNN. I got a clip ready and set to go. One of the reasons I wanted to cover this one specifically is because we're going to see a bias of CNN, and as someone that voted Democrat, voted for Joe Biden, this is the whole reason we started channels like this. Like we have started this channel and others have started channels like this. And it's because of the constant attempt to try and get some kind of narrative or force some kind of story out of it. You're going to see what I'm talking about once we get through this. But this is starting off talking about Matt Gaetz and his almost confrontation while they were having the House or the vote for McCarthy.
Congressman Matt Gaetz joins me now. Congressman, thank you for coming back. Without C-SPAN, it occurs to me that without C-SPAN cameras, we would not have seen you nearly attacked by Mike Rogers. Do you think that incident is an example of why some of your colleagues, they don't want full camera access?
No, I think that the reason people have opposed our effort to democratize viewing of the House floor is because in many of the debates, no one's present. And they want to maintain the fiction that that's actual legislating. And whenever there's sharp disagreement or discord or fiery debate on the floor or in committee, the camera always catches those moments. But there are also moments of great interpersonal warmth and collaboration and the forming of alliances that you might not normally see, whether it's myself talking to Ilhan Omar about war powers or Pramila Jayapal about big tech regulation or discussing floor strategy with AOC. I think the American people would be able to humanize Congress more if they saw more of our human interactions and not just the theater that's on display during much of the debate.
All right, so that I actually pretty much agree with. And like he said, that should really be like a bipartisan thing. At the end of the day, this is about trying to get as many congressmen into those seats when they're having those important votes, or any vote for that matter, to let us know that they are invested in our interests and making sure that our interests are taken care of. Like they need to be there all the time. If they are getting paid by U.S. tax dollars, they need to be in there. No question about that. But what's funny about this is I'm going to bring up the next clip is because after Matt Gaetz, I'm not a defender of Matt Gaetz, but he held himself in a very professional manner while he was on CNN. And we have the anchor that is consistently trying to go back to the attack and trying to pry some kind of story out of it.
Right.
All right, so I'm going to bring it up.
Florida Congressman Matt Gaetz joins me now. Congressman, thank you for coming.
Oh, hold on. That's the wrong one.
Well, while you bring that up, I actually do want to make sure that we elaborate more on this idea that he has for cameras. And the cameras being, all over the place and, never not stop rolling them. I think actually the idea in my head is that anybody that is like a public service member, I think should be having a camera connected to them, live streaming. Police officers have to do this all the time. And I don't think that politicians should be exempt from that. They're public service members as well. And we do need to see what is happening all day. If you're president, I'm sorry, but your entire life should be streamed on the internet 24/7. You don't have a private life at that point. You are the president of the United States. If you want to take that job on, then you should waive away your privacy status. And I get it, there's wartime, and you got to be able to have meetings and such, behind closed doors with congressmen. Okay, but on a day-to-day basis, I completely agree with exactly what he's saying there, but I don't think he's going far enough. I think we need to go further.
All right, so let's play this clip.
With regard to Rogers and the incident, which I'm showing now in slow-mo, what went on from your perspective? How much did you see of him coming at you?
All right, so a quick clip, but that's him again, just pressing the matter, going forward, and trying to see, what were you thinking? What were you feeling? What do you think was going to happen there? When he's actually trying to talk about the important things, like he's actually trying to talk about politics and whatever his platform may be. And they just want to keep
as
pressing.
much as I want those cameras, the camera work in that instance was a little shoddy because it followed Kevin McCarthy back into the well of the House, and we never saw you. Did you get on your feet? Did you get ready for blows? I mean, how close did it come?
So after telling him on 3 different occasions that it's all good, everything's fine, that sometimes that happens between coworkers.
Right.
Like, this is something that just happens. And, he said that they have a great work relationship. Everything's good between them. And he kept trying to press, because this is CNN's attempt of trying to show that they are divided, especially Matt Gaetz and his Freedom Caucus, trying to show that there's a divide in the Republican Party. And so they're not somebody that can be reliable or trustworthy. And it's more propaganda from one media company. And then, of course, Fox News has all their stuff, and we'll talk more on that, I'm sure, in the coming episodes. But in this instance, I wanted to point out a bias that was going on, at least with CNN, that's so blatant and obvious, when he's specifically just trying to talk about important issues.
I do have to say that I'm actually super surprised at the fact that they had Matt Gaetz on their network.
It's because he's professional. That's why. At the end of the day, anybody say anything you want about the man, he is a professional individual, and he can definitely hold himself.
Yeah. I'm surprised, because it seems as though, the right is always willing to have a conversation with anybody about whatever topic they want. But anytime that the right invites somebody from the left to have a conversation, sometimes it's like pulling teeth and nails. You've got some individuals out there that will try and still hold a conversation with you, but for the most part, the vast majority of the left, they just don't want to have that conversation. So the fact of them even inviting Matt Gaetz on, was it really just a ploy to try and get,
No,
this
100%
fight?
100%. It was talk about the fight. Like, they wanted to talk about the fight, and they wanted to talk about January 6th. And that's exactly what they talked about. But he pressed that. It's roughly a 10-minute segment on YouTube on CNN, and you can find the whole segment, watch it all the way through. And for the first 3 minutes or so, it is him pressing this matter, trying to get something out of it.
Yeah.
But he does go on to talk about cameras in Congress, and they get into that a little bit more detail. We do have a clip for that. And they also talk a little bit of, how Matt Gaetz believed that there was some kind of FBI involvement in it. And they want to get to the bottom of it by releasing all of the videotapes from January 6th to the public.
Okay.
But we're going to start with the first video.
Okay.
Another matter that pertains to video. You apparently were able to earn a concession from him that all of the security video from Capitol Hill on January 6th is going to enter the public domain. First of all, correct me if I'm wrong. I believe that was something that you were able to get him to agree to. Secondly, what is it you want to see? What do you expect to see in that video?
Well, I think that you likely will see a lot of exculpatory evidence where people may have been in some sort of technical violation of federal criminal law, but never intended to harm anyone and never intended to breach any type of security barrier. A lot of those barriers may have been taken down. I'm a believer that transparency answers a lot of questions, and whether there's higher criminal acuity for some, lower criminal acuity for others, releasing that video will be important. Also, we already know from whistleblower interviews we've done that there were federal assets and agents that were on the ground that day. To be able to observe their conduct, their potential coordination with one another would be of great interest to many of us on the Judiciary Committee, and I think many people throughout the country.
So I do remember him mentioning this actually before they had elected McCarthy all the way through, before he actually finally got all of the votes. This is one of the stipulations that the Freedom Caucus actually wanted, was that they wanted the video footage released from January 6th. And I think that it's actually really important because, when we talk about January 6th, the right goes to the extreme of saying that it was just simply like as if they were tourists walking through the building, while the left will sit there and say the exact opposite, that it was riots and it was chaotic and everything was happening. And both of those are true.
Yes.
One side of the building was being breached by rioters, while the other side of the building, the doors were completely opened up by public officials.
Yeah, I was actually going to bring that up because me and you have had this argument. And we've talked about this and how I, at least from everything that I have seen, it showed that it was relatively violent and there were a lot of people rushing the doors. People got injured, so on and so forth. But also that's perspective of one side of the building. And that's something that I didn't necessarily take into account until re-reviewing the information and seeing that there's multiple aspects, multiple angles. And so I do think it will be beneficial to release all of that stuff. And there are Democrats that are out there concerned or saying that it could jeopardize some kind of investigation or something of that nature. But I don't think that to be the case. I really don't see how it could jeopardize any kind of investigation by simply public releasing exactly what happened and how it happened. Now, I know. Go ahead.
I think they said something like 10,000 hours of footage.
Yeah, it's an insane amount of footage.
It's been a while since I've looked into it, actually, but the amount of footage is actually insane. And the thing that I worry about the most, I guess, is a sham investigation. So if we tell the people we're going to have this investigation, then the investigation concludes, that there was nothing found, when in fact that there was something found, then they could just say, okay, well, we did the investigation, nothing was found, everything's fine, everybody go back about your day. Whereas if there was genuinely FBI involvement in that, I mean, that's a breach to our national security that the FBI was involved in.
Yeah, that would be a big deal. But I guess the question would be, how would you be able to isolate who was a federal agent inside the crowd and who was not?
I guess that is actually very fair, because you do have people saying
it's not like they're going to have FBI across their chest. You know what I mean?
Like you have people
you have individuals calling out individuals for supposedly being narcs and stuff like that, or being feds.
Well, you do have videos of there was one individual specifically that was sitting there saying, like, I am a Fed, we got to do this, we got to do this. And I mean, that documentation is going to end up coming out with these videos with the 10,000 hours. So if there was actually FBI involvement in there, I have faith. I don't necessarily trust the Republican Party, to be completely honest, either, but I've got more faith in the Republican Party to actually do a true investigation. I think that they would handle the investigation a lot better. And it depends on who's appointed in charge of that committee, really, because I mean, you could throw a bunch of Republicans in there that would not take the investigation seriously, or just not care, or just have a complete sham investigation. So it really does depend on who leads the committee and who's the committee members of that investigation.
I agree. I actually agree with all of that. I think you're right on the nail on that one. We're gonna play this last video from Matt Gaetz real quick.
Okay.
Prosecutors have said, and I'm thinking in the context of the case of Eric Torrens, he from Tennessee, it shouldn't be released because it's going to jeopardize security, that too much will enter the public domain about the nooks and crannies, my words, not theirs, of the Capitol. Are you worried that you're going to jeopardize the security of yourself and your colleagues if all of this video comes into the public space?
No, almost every inch of the Capitol is subject to video surveillance. If you don't believe that, go into any casino in America and you see the extent to which the zooms and pans and tilts inform on how people see these things. So if the security of members of Congress is dependent on shielding the perspectives of these cameras, then it's not a very good security regime. I think that's a red herring, and I think it's an argument made by the Department of Justice because they don't want to expose the extent to which there might have been federal assets or agents enhancing criminal acuity. We don't know that. That's why we want to see the footage. But I think we'll all be safe and sound even following the release of that information.
You know, I hate to say it again, but I'm agreeing with Matt Gaetz on more issues than one. These aren't bad issues for him to take a stand on. They're bipartisan issues. Whether that gets him liked or something of that nature is a question in itself. But
I think it definitely gets him liked among the Republican Party.
Yeah,
and a lot of independents as well.
Yeah, no, I agree with you. I think independents are definitely going to see him as something that they might want in the future. Definitely in the higher echelons of politics, whether it be going presidential or something of that nature.
2028, I think he makes a debut for vice presidency.
You think so?
I think so.
I think so.
I think he still
continues down the path that he is going.
Yeah.
I could see that happening.
I think that it's still a little too soon for him to announce an actual presidency run, but I think 2028, as long as everything keeps going according to plan for him and he keeps doing his job as well as he is, then I think 2028 he'll probably go for a vice presidency.
Yeah. I'm like I said, I'm still not a fan of the guy. I probably wouldn't vote for him depending on who he's running against and what the policies are against each other, because that's usually how I weigh my elections anyway.
What do you think of a DeSantis Gaetz runoff? Not a runoff. Whoever you want to put in on the left. It really,
That's
it
the
doesn't
problem
matter.
is there's not really anybody I would even choose from the left right now.
Okay.
You know, we talked about how I had voted for Biden specifically because I thought it would help reduce some of the chaos that was going on in this country just by easing tensions of not having Trump in office. But obviously that tension just got flipped on the other side. And
the summer of love riots that we had during COVID. I mean, I can understand, you know, back in 2019? I think it was before Trump was, you know, kicked out of office. Essentially, we had the riots all over the country, and you know, everybody wanted to point the finger at Trump. And I mean, you can't blame Trump for having riots everywhere. But I can understand the sentiment where the country is feeling like, okay, well, we got to point the finger and blame somebody. He's our president. The captain goes down with the ship. It's his fault. Let's vote. Democrat.
I don't see it as necessarily saying that it's his fault or pointing the finger at him, but I do think that his lack of professionalism definitely damaged a lot of the trust that we're supposed to instill to the president of the United States. Yeah. You know, there's supposed to be a level of respect for your president, regardless if you don't like them or not. That has always been the case, at least for me growing up. And that definitely went away relatively quickly. I mean, you had a lot of people that respected Obama, but there's also other people that thought he was the Antichrist. Right. And then
same thing with Trump. Yeah.
And then Trump comes along, and the same thing. Some people even called him the Antichrist, and he was definitely not professional in any way, shape, or form. You know, and now Biden's in office, and it's constantly just, oh, he's an old man, he's gonna die.
Yeah, I don't hear anybody calling him the Antichrist.
No, I don't hear anybody calling him no, and so it's just, you know, it's a continuing cycle, and I just wish that we could get back to a place where it's, you know, because I don't like the way he runs them. I don't think it's good for the country, but I can at least respect the position that he is currently in. And Now you watch Ben Shapiro or any of the Daily Wire stuff, and it is consistently and constantly just bashing it
Mhm.
left and right, left and right. And it's a not necessarily a form of fear mongering, but he's saying what a lot of people do think. And I get
Mhm.
that, I get that at the end of the day, but like we have to find the commonality, that we have to find that neutrality. We have to
We
find that
yeah.
compromise. You know what I
We
mean?
we need to find solutions rather than just sitting here and arguing with each other
Yeah.
about what the problem
And
is.
that's what I respect about Matt Gaetz coming on
Yeah.
CNN. Is he is a guy that doesn't have to come on CNN. He chose to go on there. He chose to talk about these issues. He more than likely knew that they were going to try to attack him on some kind of thing. And he still went in there so he could say his piece and let his policies out. And he did it in a very professional manner. I have respect for that.
I do have to say though that CNN did come out a while ago and they said that they wanted to change the way that they were reporting news and they wanted to get back to actually
Did
having
I
facts and
don't have an article on it, but did you hear that CNN actually wants to do their own like comedy nighttime show, political show, like Jon Stewart's what was it? What he has one on Apple TV right now that I watch that I actually like a lot.
who who do they want to put into that limelight? I don't. I'm not opposed to it. Every other news network. I don't like any of them, to be completely honest. I don't think that any of them are funny. Greg Gutfeld right now is completely
Now,
killing it over in
John
Fox, and I don't think that he's hilarious at all. He's not funny at all.
No, Jon Stewart's not funny on Apple TV. He's got his
Yeah,
show on Apple TV, and I don't find it funny. I don't find him funny. I do respect
Trevor
John.
Noah.
No, we're
Trevor
not.
Noah actually. There's
I
a
didn't find
couple
him,
times. There's a
but
couple times.
when it comes to Jon Stewart, I respect him because of everything he's done for veterans and for 9/11
Mhm.
survivors and all of that stuff. And he talks about really important issues. Whether you agree with them or not, that's a whole different question. But he does talk about really important issues that I appreciate.
Yeah,
And so we'll see if CNN does something of that nature. But
it depends on who they put there.
yeah. All right. So let's move on to the next thing. We're going to talk about the Wagner Mercenary Group. This is
Okay.
a group that is working with the Russian forces. They're essentially a branch off of the military running independently. And I want to talk about this. They've been in the news for a while. I want to talk about them because they just recently were trying to take credit for taking the city of Soledad or Soledar. That's what it is. Soledar.
Can you give us a quick background on who they are?
Yeah, let's do that real quick.
I think that that's, just to
Who
get
is the
everybody all on the
man
same page, I
behind
think.
the Wagner Group? What can you tell us about his relationship with the Russian army and with Vladimir Putin himself?
His name is Yevgeny Prigozhin. He's 61 years old. He spent some time in a Soviet prison. After the fall of the Soviet Union, he went into the catering and restaurant business, made a lot of money, became a close associate of President Putin, which he still is. And although he didn't found the Wagner Group, the Wagner Group's name is now associated with him. It is essentially his private army that he runs through money that he raises in various ways, including by using the group as mercenaries in different parts of the world, Syria, Libya, the Central African Republic, to name but a few. But they are now active in the fight in eastern Ukraine, but they were also first involved in Ukraine in 2014.
And his star is on the rise right now.
Well, he certainly seems to think so. I mean, he does not criticize President Putin, but it would not surprise me if he has contemplated the possibility one day of a post-Putin political order. And he is certainly one of those positioning himself to demonstrate that he is a patriotic leader, that he is a military leader, that he has won victories for Russia. That is partly what the Wagner operation in Ukraine is all about.
So would you say that they act and he acts with the blessing of Putin?
You know, that is a very interesting question. The lines of communication are murky as between him and Putin. He certainly wouldn't be doing it if Putin disapproved. One doesn't do that in Russia. The relationship between the Russian intelligence services and the professional army in the Wagner Group are somewhat more difficult to discern because on the one hand, there must be coordination. On the other hand, lately they have clearly made it clear that they are not allies and in fact see themselves as rivals in this war.
So I think I'll ask the same question that she did there, but in a different way. Do you think that they are loyal to Russia, to Putin, or do you think that they're more loyal to whoever the highest bidder is?
I don't think it's I think they're loyal to Russia.
Okay.
I think they are loyal to Putin for as long as Putin stays in power.
Okay.
I could honestly, this guy with his army, he's amassed about 20,000 troops so far. We're going to go into an article about that, but he's raised up about 20,000 troops so far. They hold a significant part of the territory right now, and I think with that, we're going to see a possible individual, like he was saying in the video, an individual that might take over leadership roles in the post-Putin Russia that may exist afterwards.
I think I did see like they're pretty much the most veteran military unit in the world today.
Supposedly. They also say that a lot of them are recruited out of prisons and things of that nature. Not sure if that's necessarily just psychological warfare or if they're actually just recruiting people from prisons, but it wouldn't surprise me if that's what they're doing.
Okay.
So we're going to show this next clip going into a little bit more about the Wagner Group.
Well, Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelensky says the battle for Soledar and Bakhmut continues nonstop in the east. Ukraine's army on Sunday said it fired rockets toward Russian troops as they tried to storm Ukrainian positions around Bakhmut. Well, this comes days after.
All right, so I did want to pause it right here because we were talking about the map yesterday and getting a full idea of the territory and everything that's currently ongoing. And so what we see here is the cities that are bordering right there. And then we see the Ukrainian counteroffensives up here in the north.
Okay.
And so we see the area that we're messing with, but the Russian-backed separatist controlled, that's the Wagner Group that they're talking about. So all of this red and green stripe that we're seeing go across, that's all belonging to the Wagner mercenaries.
Oh, wow.
And so they're holding a relatively strong part of the area. No doubt.
For 20,000 troops, yeah.
Yeah, and we see that the front lines for the majority is Russian army, but they have these guys back here as, who knows what kind of force, maybe a reserve force or something of that nature, but we're seeing them begin to play a much more heavy and active role inside of this war.
Right. Yeah, I mean, they're the cavalry when you need them and you say, hey, our line's been broken, send them in. They're right there. I mean, they're not necessarily right on the front line, but when you look in like that city right there of Donetsk, I mean, if that line gets pushed, you've got 20,000 troops from a separate. Yeah, I mean, it's not looking good.
All right, so let's finish up this video real quick.
Okay.
Russia claimed to have taken control of the nearby town of Soledar. Moscow's defense ministry says it did so with the help of the private military company Wagner. But the group's boss insists his mercenaries deserve all the credit.
Firstly, Wagner mercenaries have been fighting for many years. They may be the most experienced army there is today in the world. Secondly, they fulfill all the tasks on their own. They have warplanes. There are heroic pilots who don't fear to perish. They have multiple launch rocket systems of all types. There are air defense systems which have downed a huge amount of enemy planes. They have artillery systems of all calibers, tanks, infantry fighting vehicles.
Well,
and so we're seeing, he's just hyping them up. You know what I mean? He's hyping himself up. He's hyping his troops up. Like I said, I don't know if this is necessarily a play for anything, but it does seem like he's trying to get some kind of notoriety inside of Russia. That could be nothing. That could be the eventual beginning of someone else taking over after Putin has been dethroned or removed through extreme force, if you will.
That's very interesting, though, that he has the claim that they have fighter jets and artillery and all of this, because I mean it's a private military.
But if it's backed by Russia, then he has everything that Russia also has.
Yeah.
I think they're running more independently, but also working jointly with them. But I think they're given more free reign to do what they're doing.
If Putin doesn't need them,
there's been horrible claims put against them, from rape claims to pillaging and all kinds of craziness.
right? Yeah, I would assume if if Putin doesn't give him the phone call, then he probably lets the reins go and say, hey, go and do your thing. Whoever's the highest bidder, go wherever you want. And they just probably have the speed dial for Putin whenever Putin calls.
Yeah, 100%. All right, so this is reported by BBC News. Is what is Russia's Wagner Group of mercenaries in Ukraine? Some 20,000 mercenaries are believed to be fighting for Russia and Ukraine. They belong to an organization called the Wagner Group, which has been used in Russia's military operations all over the world. The Wagner Group's fighters now make up 10% of Russia's fighting force in Ukraine. Thousands are raw recruits from Russian prisons. The Wagner Group starting recruits in large numbers after the Kremlin had trouble finding people for the regular army, U.S. intelligence officials have said. It's thought the organization has previously had 5,000 fighters, most of whom were former fighters, including many elite regiments. The Wagner Group also adopted a higher profile, including a large number of headquarters inside of St. Petersburg. It is openly recruiting in Russian cities on billboards and is being named in Russian media as a patriotic organization. That's
Okay.
crazy, right? They're straight up a mercenary group that's just recruiting off the streets. If you don't want to join the army, you come join us. You can come kill
Right.
and drink beer.
Yeah, no, that's kind of insane because, as the right has, or the left has every reason to not like the Wagner Group, the same way that the right has every reason not to like the Azov battalion that is fighting for Ukraine. And I think both are correct. If some of these claims that you were mentioning about the Wagner Group are true, then that's an army of 20,000. How are you going to be able to put them down, when the time comes, if the time comes? Because it seems like it's a rabid wolf that is loosely controlled by one person right now, and when that one person is gone, it's 20,000 strong that supposedly
But
are the most veteran.
Here's another reason that I believe they might possibly, or the leader might be possibly trying to make some kind of play, is because an unnamed White House spokesperson told Reuters that the leader may want the Wagner Group to capture that area because of its salt and gypsum mines.
Okay.
Which obviously, they're valuable. They hold money. It's good for trade, so on and so forth. So if you can own that, you can claim that as your own and say that this is your territory. You've earned this. Then, who knows? But we got another report right here in the same article. It said the United Nations and the French government have accused Wagner mercenaries of committing rapes and robbery against civilians in the Central African Republic, and the EU has imposed sanctions as a result of these.
Okay.
In 2020, the United States military accused Wagner mercenary of having planted landmines and other improvised explosive devices in and around the Libyan capital, Tripoli.
Oh, wow.
So they're not a great group, they're some bad dudes.
Yeah. I mean, I have to say that when you rewind this entire thing, all of this could have been avoided. This whole thing, Russia and Ukraine were getting ready to shake hands, and then who was it? Somebody from Europe, I think it was Boris Johnson, as a matter of fact, pretty much told Ukraine, no, you're not allowed to make that deal with them. Let's go to war. And then now we escalate into this, and is projected that there's no way that Russia would be able to stand for 2 months, and here we are 11 months in, close to a year now.
And now the reports are coming out that spring is going to be some of the hardest war fighting over there.
Yeah, Putin's talking about adding another 500,000 troops.
Yeah, we're and we're gonna play a clip right now of actually some pretty bad devastation that happened in Ukraine.
Okay. Yeah, that apartment building.
Yes, the apartment building. I pressed the wrong button though. Video file share. There we go.
Okay.
In Dnipro, and he joins us now with the latest. Matt, glad you're there. This has just been a horrific story to watch unfold through your reporting. What more are we learning about the strike, and what's the latest on those impacted?
The latest on the impacted is that dozens remain wounded at this point. It was 70. The death toll continues to rise, Terry. It was about 25 yesterday, but they continue to find people buried in the rubble. It's now at 40 and expected to rise further. There are about 30 people unaccounted for. Some of them might be found elsewhere.
That's
but we
as
do
of yesterday.
anticipate that some additional bodies will be found in that pile of debris that remains. It was about 4 stories high when we arrived there just hours after the missile strike. It's now, they've combed through it, picked it apart, grabbed it, and cleared a lot of that twisted concrete and rebar and debris. It's now just about 1 story high. There is no more hope to find anybody alive. It was smoldering for days. It was snowing outside, exposure, etc. They no longer think that there is any hope for survivors. Now, you mentioned that missile earlier. That we're talking about a KH-22. This is a Soviet-era missile designed to take out aircraft carriers. It is 38 feet tall, weighing nearly 13,000 pounds. And when you see those images of the impact it created, essentially creating open air sky where a 72-unit, 9-story apartment building once stood, it gives you an understanding of the destructive power of that missile.
That is actually, you know what? Let's. Look at this thing.
Yeah, I have another video that is Russia's response video. Essentially them saying initially Russia had not really said anything. There's talk about them possibly even denying an attack. Now they're essentially coming out and saying that they did attack it, and it's because they believe that there were Ukrainian forces operating inside the building.
Okay. I mean, when it comes to war, we all like to say that we would adhere to the Geneva Convention, but what happens when your enemy doesn't?
Russia's had a couple of different accounts. The first was that it was actually a Ukrainian anti-missile that struck that apartment building, that it wasn't actually Russian munitions that destroyed and obliterated that place. Now they're saying that it was actually a hit against a military target. They're saying that collaborators were killed there. Obviously, there's a lot of propaganda coming out of Russia, and this is the kind of thing that they've typically done after massive strikes have hit civilian targets. As far as we could tell in that area, there is no military installation, no power facilities, nothing that would seem to be anything but just a really large middle-class neighborhood that was completely destroyed. And, when you look at the facade of the building, I don't know if they're rolling on those images right now, you can see that the buildings adjacent to the one that was destroyed are basically buckled. We were trying to go inside one of those buildings today, but we're told that the buildings around it are no longer they're no longer sound, so we couldn't go in there at all. We don't know if the rest of the buildings are going to have to be condemned, the ones around it as well. It just gives you a sense of the power of the destructive power of that missile, Terry.
So
that is a mighty big hit.
No, it's a huge hit, and that's the thing. Like, there's so much lacking information from both sides, from both Ukraine and Russia. Could there have been some kind of Ukrainian forces inside of that building? Sure. Should the Russian have striked it? Probably not. It's only more bad publicity for them. Maybe it was a target misunderstanding. Maybe they got the coordinates wrong. Maybe they got some misinformation and ended up blowing up a wrong building.
Right. I don't think that it's beyond Putin. I mean, this is kind of his motive. And
that's my point. Is I don't think it is beyond him though. Like there's a bunch of reasons that we could come up with that could possibly be a reason for this happening, but more than likely it's Putin just trying to use brute force and push these people out of the area so that he can move his forces further inward.
Right. Yeah, and I mean, this is kind of the way that he's done it from the very beginning, is he kind of pushes people in. He uses a lot of artillery to push, the civilians out, to push them back. And then he pushes his people in. So that way he loses less forces, because there's less of a threat, there's less people there to defend that land. So I mean, I don't put this past him at all. I think that this is actually what he usually does, and I, I don't think that Putin necessarily cares if there was civilians or if there was even Ukrainian military members in that building. I think that that was his target, and that's what he was going to hit regardless, no matter what. Or maybe it wasn't even a target. Maybe he's just firing them and seeing where it lands. I mean, this is the ugly truth of war, unfortunately. Civilians are just they're in the way in the eyes of the dictator that wants to take over somebody else's land.
No, you're right, 100%. But yeah, let's switch it up. We're gonna bring it into one of our last subjects, but not the last one fully.
Something a little bit more upbeat than war.
I mean, it's not better. So right here we got CDC, FDA see possible link between Pfizer's Belimumab shot and strokes, which means they are saying essentially there is a possibility that strokes could be one of the side effects coming from the COVID vaccine. This is not something that necessarily surprises me. Vaccines and medicines, even Tylenol and ibuprofen, all have some kind of side effect. And so as we read through, the agency said the surveillance signal is very unlikely to present a true clinical risk and said they continue to recommend the vaccine. The CDC, a bug just flew into my mouth. That was disgusting. Hold on. I gotta drink some water. It was like a little tiny gnat.
It's that time of year.
Oh, it's the worst. All right, so the CDC and FDA announced on Friday that their surveillance system flagged a possible link between the new Pfizer biotech Belimumab COVID-19 vaccine, man, that is a mouthful, and strokes in people age 65 and over, but said that they were continuing to recommend the shots. So that's also not a surprise to me because older people 65 and over are susceptible to dying from the flu vaccine. I actually had a neighbor that got the flu vaccine back in like 2012, very old lady. And the next day after that she got that, she died in her sleep. Now it wasn't necessarily verified that it was the flu vaccine, but it's a high probability that it was just because of her age alone. Like her body just couldn't taking a vaccine.
So I don't think that this surprises me in the least bit at all. As a matter of fact, I think for like the last year now, doctors have been coming out pretty frequently saying that there's been some crazy adverse reactions in a lot of age groups. You know, the jab when it comes to teenagers, boys specifically, for some reason had some really bad reactions to it. And you know, these are very small percentages. It's not like you need to be worried that your son or your daughter or you are going to have an adverse reaction. Chances are you're probably not. But I do think that it's actually really important to understand that there is a threat there. And now, with more information coming out and there being so many reactions to it, I don't think that they're taking the right play by saying that they still recommended. I think that that's more money talking than anything else. But I
guess it would depend on
man.
I guess it depends on the number of individuals that are having strokes. What is the percentage, and is it because really it's saying that the real-time surveillance system, CDC vaccine safety data link met criteria warranting further investigation into whether the vaccine led to higher risk of stroke, which occurs when arteries pumping blood to the brain are blocked by a blood clot.
But I think that it's impossible to know what the exact number is. There's a couple people,
and it's hard to tell, especially when we're talking about individuals that are 65 or over.
Right. Yeah,
but they're also the most at risk for serious illness when it comes to getting COVID.
Yeah, but it's the numbers themselves as well. The numbers have been known to be inflated or deflated. We found out months later that the numbers were completely wrong when they were being reported. Now we know that there's been all kinds of collusion with tech industries and with our own government through some of the Twitter files that have been coming out, that a lot of this was just being covered up, or people were being silenced from being able to speak on certain things. I don't think that we're ever going to really know what the true number is or the true percentages of these adverse reactions, because for whatever reason, I think that money talks. They just don't want you to know. And the more people that they can keep continuously having as recurring customers every year, year in and year out, keep getting another jab, another jab, another jab. Where's your booster? Where's your booster? The same way that they've been doing the flu for the longest time. This pandemic is just resetting the button on the flu as far as finances go. Now they're doubling their money rather than just getting the payment off of the flu shot every year.
Yeah, but let's not say that that it doesn't help people, because at the end of the day,
I-
it does help,
yeah.
especially for people over 65. Like
Yeah.
they like, regardless of your belief in it just being about money, this does save
Mhm.
people's lives in the specific group that we're talking about. That is could be in the territory of getting a stroke. And
Right.
so I understand if you're younger and stuff like that and you don't want to take it and you're in healthy shape and so on and so forth. Like, I get that. But when we're talking about this specific age group and this demographic, I think that it is a much smarter idea to just get the shot. And when it comes to the flu shot, I get the flu shot every year, and I
Right.
haven't had the flu in years. Then again, people say that they haven't got the flu shot and they've never gotten the flu, or that they get the flu right after they got the flu shot, which just
Right.
means that they caught the flu before they got the shot.
I'm not an anti-vaxxer, the same position that I hold on abortion. I don't think that anybody should have it, but I can't tell you what to do. I
I do not believe
Yeah,
it should be forced unless it is a
Man, it
very,
shouldn't.
very deadly disease.
No, it shouldn't be mandatory. I agree with that, but I haven't gotten a flu vaccine actually. And
I agree. I agree with I agree with the beginning of the pandemic.
Mhm.
I agree with, because the science just wasn't out there publicly for everybody
Mhm.
to fully understand what was going on and what we were dealing with. As that information got released, I think that we should have eased up, should have let people make it really
Mhm.
about a personal decision on whether they'd get it or not. Like I said, I personally myself ended up getting it, but I understand that other people don't want to get it, and I don't
Mhm.
think it should have ever been a mandatory or forced thing in any way, shape, or form.
That's another topic, as a matter of fact. I think that we've got like 8,000 service members
Uh-huh.
right now that were
I heard about that one.
yeah, they got kicked out of the military actually
They're
as
trying to get back in, or they're allowed back in.
less than honorable discharges. I don't know if they'll be reinstated. I don't know if they're going to have back pay. I don't know exactly what's going on with it, but because a lot of people will sit there and say, "Oh, that's just conspiracy theory. There was no vaccine mandates." But there was. People were getting fired all over the
Yeah.
country.
Well, I think the military is different because you go in there knowing that you're going to get shot up with whatever the government tells you to
You
take.
do sign a contract when you sign
Yeah.
up with the military.
Like, I can't tell you
do
how many
lose
different
everything.
shots I have gotten time and time again, and not
Mhm.
one of the times did I ever question what was inside those
Right.
vials.
You should
It-
have.
maybe, but
Yeah.
even at the end of the day, I still have to take it if I
Yeah.
want to be combat efficient and combat
Correct.
active.
You
Like,
should have
so-
asked, but you
Yeah.
wouldn't have been able to say no.
Exactly. Yes. So 100%. But this became such a politicized issue that it caused all these members to decide not to get it. Maybe it was a good idea for them. Maybe it wasn't a good idea for them. I guess it's going to be a case by case basis on if it was truly a good decision and if they feel like they made the right decision.
Before we hop over to the next topic, I just want to give a shout out to Mr. Dr. John Campbell on YouTube. It's where I get all of my COVID information. He does it in like the nice style like your old middle school teacher used to do, with the the projector screen that's got like the mirror and you're able to write down here and it projects onto the screen. And he does it in a nice, what old fashioned forms nowadays, because we don't even use whiteboards at this point anymore.
Yeah.
But he goes through almost on a religious daily basis. He goes through COVID news all the way around the world. He's based out of UK and Europe, so he focused primarily on that. But he looks at data samples from everywhere, all over the place, and he's just reading what the statistics, what the facts are. Sometimes there's some stuff on, this is being reported by so and so news station. but for the most part, I mean, that's where I try and get most of my COVID information from. Dr. John Campbell, YouTube.
Dr. Don Campbell. Okay,
Dr.
so
John Campbell.
as we move on to the last issue for the night, we are jumping into a AP news story. This story is as elites arrive in Davos, conspiracy theories thrive online. I wanted to quickly hit on this as we end our segment because I know we're going to be talking much more on this topic as the World Economic Forum of 2023 is now in full effect. It is ongoing. You can actually read articles about how entire hotels have been shut down for the quote unquote elites that are going there. This includes actors, this includes politicians, this includes lobbyists, this includes all of the most powerful and influential individuals that are walking the face of the earth.
Mm-hmm.
Now, not all of them, but a good majority of them are coming to this thing. To include, we named it off in I think the last
We did
video.
some of them, yeah.
All of the governmental individuals that are headed to Davos. But
So
go ahead.
I would ask then, off of that list of people, corporations, businesses, governments, are those not the elite?
Yeah, if you want to, I don't see. That's the thing. I don't like necessarily calling them the elite because I don't see them as the elite. I see them as
It puts them
people-
on a pedestal.
Exactly. It puts
Yeah.
them on a pedestal. They're people like you and me. They just happen to have more money and more influence than you and I do.
Right.
That I don't think that necessarily makes them the elite, but they have been categorized as that from media, from the right, from the left. Everybody calls them the elite. And
Mhm.
so I say that just to simplify it, and it's essentially a shorthand for very powerful and influential people.
Okay.
At least that's how I see it. Now I know people on the right and you as well see the elite as more as an organization of individuals that coming together, and you believe, and like many others believe that these guys are working to bring down what is America and what they're calling now globalization.
Right. Not just
and-
America, but all the way around the world. Yeah.
There's you're seeing this as a form of essentially communism that is trying to be spread around the world. I personally do not see it that way. I believe that they are doing a type of globalization, but I don't think that's necessarily a bad thing because I believe it is people that actually have the ability to do change are deciding to get together, have discussions on how they might possibly make the world a better place. Now,
Okay.
that is not to say that they are not out of touch, that they don't know what they're talking about. That is not to say that they don't have stupid freaking ideas. But I do not think the intention is malicious in any intent. I think it is specifically people that legit, or it could be virtue signaling. But I believe that the overall goal is not necessarily to make them more powerful and take power from us, but to try and figure out how to help the world issues as a one united planet and not as individuals.
So the issue that I have with it is, let's say that there is no malice intent here and that they really want to help the planet. Let's go with that.
Okay.
The issue that I have is that they're unelected and they're essentially lobbyists for the world. And when we have politicians that go to these events for some reason, whether it's I don't want to speculate on why, but we've got politicians or government officials that go to these events with the World Economic Forum, and when they come back stateside or to whatever country you're in, they start voting on those policies that the World Economic Forum had shown to them, regardless of what their constituents are saying. Doesn't matter what the people of Texas are saying. If we had a member of Congress or a senator that was a part of the World Economic Forum that just wanted to push that agenda, it wouldn't matter what the people of Texas said or if we disagreed with it. And that's my issue, is that the World Economic Forum is like a big lobbyist.
My answer to that would be vote them out if you don't like it.
If
the constituents are not liking what they are doing, because maybe they just thought it was a good idea. When they went to the World Economic Forum, they were like, you know what? I think this is actually a good idea. I would like to implement this into our system. Now,
Mhm.
if the constituents don't like that, you have every right to vote them out, and
Right.
that's usually what happens, especially somewhere like here in Texas.
I agree in Texas for sure. If that happened here in Texas, I think that we would be quick. I
But this
don't think
goes
that we would be as quick in like New Jersey or New York, though.
But that goes on to the point that we actually had a discussion about this, how I believe that we're eventually possibly going to lead to a point where we've separated into very drastic what's the word I'm looking for? I can't think of it right now. But essentially groupings of individuals based on political differences. So you're going to have California that is going to be 98% Democrat. You're going to have Texas is going to be 98% Republican. And you're going to have it sectioning off like this. And I think that is eventually what could lead to a civil war. But again, I don't think that's something that's going to happen for even decades and decades upon decades.
Scroll down a little bit.
Yeah.
I want to be able to give the listener the ability to continue
All right,
reading.
yeah,
Oh,
so
it's very short. It's very short. Okay.
Yes, it's actually got a little bit more to it.
Oh, okay. Good.
I'm gonna read it real quick. So just to read a little bit of this. All right, so reported by AP News, when some of the world's wealthiest and most influential figures gathered at the World Economic Forum annual meeting last year, sessions on climate change drew high levels of discussion on topics such as carbon financing and sustainable food sources. But an entire different narrative played out on the internet where social media users claimed leaders wanted to force the population to eat insects instead of meat in the name of saving the environment. The annual event in the Swiss resort town of Davos, which opens Monday, has increasingly become a target of bizarre claims from a growing chorus of commenters who believe the forum involves a group of elites manipulating global events for their own benefit. Experts say what was once a conspiracy theory found in the internet's underbelly has now hit the mainstream. Now, go ahead. What's up?
Yeah, there's no conspiracy about the fact that they want you to eat bugs. That is what they want you to do. They want you to get off of meat products and they want you to eat bugs.
No, the idea is to stop using less meat. Again, another bad idea, but they're not trying to force you to eat bugs.
All right, so I think that the World Economic Forum. I want to do an entire hour segment on this, but I want to wait until this event is over at the very least and make sure that whatever news comes out for the World Economic Forum is through, and their events don't typically last for too long, usually a week, maybe a couple of weeks, depending on the location and, who they have and what's going on. But I definitely will bring up the bug thing tomorrow because I'm definitely I'm gonna go into a little bit of research and that's the thing too, is that we say that, they're trying to, they're not forcing you to eat bugs and, blah, blah, blah. And I'll definitely bring it up tomorrow. I'll definitely.
So I wanted to bring this up, at the end, because I just wanted to highlight that a lot of this is seen as conspiracy theory. Now, you may bring evidence to the table suggesting that they are, in fact, actually trying to force us to eat bugs, and I would love to see this evidence and backed up with actual facts. This continues on. They talk about, I'm not going to say it, the great new beginning.
Okay.
We're going to go with that. So because I guess YouTube doesn't like us saying that word. The button that starts things over.
Yeah, there you go.
We can't say that word.
Turning it off and on again.
Yeah. We can't say that word apparently. So we're going to make sure we stay away from that word as much as possible. But this is very much a conservative and far right-wing talking point. Okay. And so I'm interested in hearing what you have to say and what evidence there actually is, because at least to my understanding, most of this stuff, if not all of it, is pretty much made up conspiracy stuff because people are afraid powerful people are joining together and trying to make some kind of political changes, which I do agree can be dangerous.
Yeah. Because I mean, let's the idea, I think that right now, for sure, America has the best form of government that the world has ever seen. And I think that we're on the cusp of just letting that go if we allow it. And we've got a whole lot of world out there that doesn't agree with the same way that we want it to work. And so you've got a lot of these communist parties that want a one world order. Okay, well, in theory, communism works. I mean, it does. Socialism works in the everything works in theory, but when it comes into practice, I think that things are too easily corruptible. So when we talk about the great start there, or a one world order, if it's done the right way, yeah, I think that it could possibly help and bring the world together, different societies, different civilizations from across the world, and it would be able to bring them together in a better light. I think for sure, but I think that form of government is way too easily corrupt. The form of government that America is sitting on right now is the least corruptible. It still has its issues. There's nothing perfect about it, but there's nothing perfect about any form of government. And I think that if we're going to have a one world government, I think that it needs to be based off of what America has. Not entirely, loosely based. There's aspects of everything else, that you can pull into it that would help it out. The stake, what is it? State capitalism, no, like state shareholder capitalism or something is what the World Economic Forum is pushing. And I don't necessarily disagree with that, but at the same time, like, they're pretty much saying that your community is a stakeholder in your business, and your community can be, if they associate themselves within your business. But if they don't associate, if you're selling Chinese food and nobody wants to eat the Chinese food, then those people are not a part of your of your shareholders. They're not improving or helping. They're not doing anything to it. It's not a part of it. And I think that that's kind of where I get lost with why, or where they're going with this, is because there is a lot. Yeah, you're a part of the community, but it doesn't make the community your stakeholder. It just doesn't make any sense.
And that's the thing. I don't think that they're trying to form a new world government. I don't think that's the intention, though. I do think that is eventually where humanity is going to end up, is under a one world government. I think that's an inevitable outcome for us eventually.
If we branch out and reach for the stars, I think so. Yeah, eventually.
Yeah, if we do end up colonizing Mars and things of that nature, I think we're going to unify in a much different way than we ever have been able to while living on Earth. But yeah, I don't think that they're out here trying to form a new government, and I don't even think it's necessarily communism. I think there's definitely aspects of communism inside their ideals. Some of them are probably too far-reaching and probably definitely stepping over the line. And that's why one reason I'm not ever really concerned about this is because I don't see America going down a path that would take on too many crazy ideals. I know we have a lot going on right now in the culture wars and stuff like that, but overall, like, these are really small surface problems. When like you said, it's a relatively good country. We have relatively good laws. Some of us vote to uphold them. Some of us vote to change them, whatever the case may be. But at the end of the day, this is working. And that's why I've continued to say I like that this is working, and I want capitalism to thrive, because that means that there are more socialist programs that we may be able to fund.
Yeah, and I mean, a lot of people would disagree with you and point out all of the flaws that are within our government.
Yeah, but there's everything.
Yeah, there's a lot of flaws, and
you can even argue that America has essentially stopped out any version of communism that was ever going to try to rise up, whether it be Cuba or Vietnam or any of those countries. There are those that say, now I'm not one of them, I'm not saying that America is actively trying to kill out communism, but at the same time, we do actively try to kill out communism. So it's not unheard of that we would try to stop governments of communism from forming if we truly believe them to be as evil as they are.
Right.
And maybe,
well, we're not trying to stop China. Biden and Xi Jinping are like best friends.
Yeah, I think it's too late to stop them. But again, we're going to talk more on them and their their slow collapse in the possible in the next 10 years or 20 years, we could see them collapsing. We need to read the geopolitical strategist book, and we're going to do a review on that.
We should get a.
I think it's going to be very important. I think it's going to be a very good perspective for us and our viewers to have.
We should get an audiobook. We should get an audiobook. That way we can listen to it while also doing everything that we need to on the computer.
That sounds good. All right, so let's close this up for the night.
All right, thank you for coming, everybody. We definitely do appreciate it. If you liked anything that I said, smash the like button. If you liked anything that he said, smash the like button. If you disliked anything, then you can absolutely hit the dislike button. Subscribe down there, and yeah, I think that we'll see you guys again next time. Oh, and leave a comment on whatever topic you guys want us to cover. You know,
Yes.
we do have a listed topic for the next couple of days, but if there's a noteworthy topic in the comments down below, please leave it down there, and we can definitely see about trying to cover it for you.
Yep. All right, till next time.
Till the next time.